Oh, this is a can of worms.
What's going on? It's Wednesday.
Hello and welcome back to another video. Today's Wednesday, so this is Waffle on a Wednesday, where I answer your questions to the best of my ability. And once again, I'd like to say, if you've got any questions for me, then please do feel free to leave them in the comments section of this video, and I will do my best to answer your questions in next week's Waffle on a Wednesday. Now, before we start this week's Waffle on a Wednesday, I'd really like to say a big thank you to everybody that has brought stickers off me through Buy Me a Coffee. It really does make a huge difference, so I really do feel that I should thank everyone. Thank you. So our first question comes from Paul Mills, and it's quite a good one. Thank you, Paul. Question: I concur with not using any inverter for 240 volt. Inverters draw far too much power and endanger the life of your battery bank. That is quite true, Paul, and I do actually agree with you on that, especially if you've got lead acid batteries or AGM batteries, because as we all know, if once you get down to 12.1 volts, that means that your battery bank is now at 50%. Any less than that and you do run the risk of damaging your lead acid batteries or AGM batteries. Not so much a problem if you've got those flash LiPo batteries, but like I've said in the past, those batteries are for the rich and famous. Not for the likes of me, that's for sure. But if, like me, you have got AGM batteries, then you really do need to keep an eye on your voltage. So 12.1 is the minimum voltage you want in those batteries. If your batteries go down to say 11 volts, then they're pretty well flat, and you do run the risk of destroying them batteries. It's very difficult for lead acid batteries to recover if they're run flat. So yeah, that is the main reason I don't fit an inverter to my van, because I don't want to run the risk of destroying my lead acid batteries, AGM batteries. So Paul goes on to ask, have you considered a direct recharge from your roof solar panel system using a split charge system, whereby you can direct the power from your solar panels to your jackery or your MPP charge controller to charge your leisure batteries? Well, Paul, yes, I have considered connecting my roof solar panel to my jackery, but because I've also got jackery solar panels, what I've done is I've got an extension lead. Actually, it's just here. Hang on, bear with me. It's just hanging up with my brush on it. So what I do with this extension lead, depending on where my van's facing and what direction my van is facing, I simply plug my extension lead into my jackery, which is under my bed. I then poke the cable, this cable, through the window and hang the panels on the side of my van, either side depending on the direction of the sun, obviously. And if I'm facing into the sun, I simply put the jackery solar panel on the dashboard of my van, and I do find that that charges the jackery quite sufficiently enough for my needs. I'm not saying that'll work for everyone, but then I don't really use 240 volt that much in my van, although this summer that is all going to change because I am experimenting on different ways to cook with electricity powered from my jackery. And I do hope that that answers that question, so thank you. Hi Mel, what do you think of the LDV Maxus? They are fairly reasonably priced. Is that for a good reason? Cheers. And that comes from our van Viv. As you probably know, I used to have an LDV Maxus, and I have to say it's probably one of the cheapest vans I've ever brought. And it looked like an absolute shed. And when I bid on that van and won the bid, at the time I was thinking, oh God, what have I done? What have I just brought? When I got in that van, despite it being an absolute dump inside, it was clearly been abused all its life. When I drove that van back from the auction, it drove superbly. It drove absolutely perfect. And I was really quite pleasantly surprised. And by the time I'd finished with that van, it turned out to be one of the best vans I've ever owned. It was completely rust free underneath. The engine was dry as a bone. There wasn't one tiny little bit of oil anywhere on that engine. And changing the timing belt on that engine was so simple. It was designed in such a way that it was really simple to change the timing belt. I absolutely loved that van. The only problems I ever had with that van was the central locking. The central locking used to play up, so I disconnected it and just used to lock it manually. But that's not a problem. After all, you can buy aftermarket locks for any van. And I really did like the instrument cluster because it was in the centre of the dashboard, and they designed it like that so that when they made that van left hand or right hand drive, they didn't have to make two dashboards. I mean, that's ingenious, just like they did with the Mini. And I think it's an absolute travesty, just like the Mini, that we sold it off to a foreign company to be manufactured abroad. It really is a shame. But unfortunately, for some reason, the LDV Maxus got a really bad reputation, and I really don't know why. Maybe because it was a running joke that LDV stands for lots of different vehicles, as they used to say at the auction rooms. And like I said earlier, I brought that van really cheap. I think I was only the second bidder. Only two people bid on that van. One was a guy that used to break vehicles, and the other one was me, and I won the bid. And that's why I was so worried when I first brought it. But I would say to anybody that's on a really tight budget, if you're looking for a cheap van, you can't go wrong with an LDV Maxus. And there was actually a video on YouTube of a guy driving his LDV Maxus and explaining why he loves his LDV Maxus so much. So have a look in the description of this video, and if I can find that video, I will definitely post it there for you. It's quite a funny video. So there you go, I am actually a big fan of the LDV Maxus, and if you're a fan of this channel and you like what I do, please do let YouTube know by giving this video a thumbs up. It's really important, and it really does help me out. And thank you for the good question and bringing back some happy memories. Love the channel, Mel. Possibly a continuous question for you. Full-time van lifers don't pay council tax, water rates and other utilities, yet they still use water, refuge services, fire, police, maybe even education services, etc. While relatively few live this way, I don't see it as an issue. What is your view on this? Should non-house dwellers contribute towards the services they benefit from? Brilliant question, and quite the can of worms I'm sure you've just opened there, and that comes from Simon Jones. Well, Simon, you're absolutely right. I can't speak for other van dwellers, but me personally, I do not pay council tax because I do not have a fixed abode. But at the end of the day, there are two things in life that are guaranteed, and that is that one day you're going to die, and we all pay tax. It is unavoidable, even though quite a few people do try to avoid paying their tax. But rest assured, I do pay my income tax, and I also pay tax on the fuel that I use. I pay tax on the chocolate biscuits I buy. I even pay tax when I buy a toilet roll. Or do we? Not quite sure about that one. I think toilet rolls are VAT free. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I do pay tax, and I have paid a huge amount of tax in the past when I had my own business. But I'm not complaining. The more tax I paid, it meant the more money I was earning, and because of my previous business, that is what's allowed me to retire early and make these videos for your enjoyment. And also, I do actually get the odd parking fine now and again, and that money goes towards the local council, so that's my way of paying a little bit of council tax. Oh, hang on, I've got a delivery. Is that heavy? Yeah, I think that's for me. Hang on, I'll be right back. I was not expecting this to be this big. Holy crap. Let's make some. Oh, the movie camera. Now, a little while ago, let's give it breath back. I was not expecting this to be this size. Take a look at this. Oh dear, oh dear. I think I might have messed up here. Now, do you remember a while ago, maxpeedingrods sent me a diesel heater to replace my 2 kilowatt diesel heater, just as a way of saying thank you for making the videos. It was unsponsored. I just made those videos purely for your entertainment. Anyway, they got in touch with me and said to me, would you like a... So anyway, a little while ago they got in touch with me and said to me, would you like to try one of our petrol generators? And at first I thought, oh, what do I need a petrol generator for? I don't really need one. I've got my power packs, right? And then I thought to myself, well, actually, I could do with a good generator in my lockup, because my lockup hasn't got power. Mary, my van, is going to need some body work doing to her soon. She's getting a bit shabby, she's getting a bit tatty around the edges. And I've got all the necessary tools to repair Mary, to do her body work, but they're all air tools, and I don't have a compressor anymore, and even if I did have a compressor, I've got no way of powering it. So that's why I thought to myself, yeah, maybe I will get a little generator. That way I could get a little tiny compressor and use my old air tools when it comes to fixing Mary. Well, I didn't expect it to be this big. So I'll take it out of the box. I'll tell you what, I'm going to take it out of the box and show you what it is. And then maybe next week I'll actually try it out. I'm not going to try it out today, but we'll do a quick impromptu unboxing. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just want to get it out of the box for my own interest, really. Let's get this knife on here. Let's undo this. Oh, be careful, Mel. I can see some paperwork in there. Oh, there you go. Right, let's take a look in the box. Right, we've got our instructions. Some kind of funky little funnel. That's probably at a guess for putting oil in it. A little toolkit. Looks like a spark plug spanner and a screwdriver. Very useful. I'm going to do this as quick as I can so we can get back to questions. Yeah, just a normal 3-pin 240 plug. A 12-volt socket with some clamps on it. Some rather strange looking connectors. Ah, now I've seen this. This could be to wire two generators together. I believe. I'm just guessing at that. All right. Bob was telling me about it. Talking about Bob, I thought I could lend him this if he needed it, but then he tells me that he's got one that's really big, so he doesn't need this. I bet he ends up borrowing it anyway. Wow, that's a beast. So good job my back's all right now, isn't it? If I do decide to carry this in the van, I'm definitely going to need a bigger one, that's for sure. Now once again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but an inverter generator is basically an all-in-one unit. Rather than having a petrol motor and a separate generator, it's all in one. I think that's what it means, and it gives you a more pure form and more steady form of power, and they don't rev up and down. From what the research I've done, but I will do a lot more research and look into that. Let's have a look at the business end. Now I'm not about to lift this up and hold it to the camera, so I've zoomed you in a little bit. Right, so what we've got two 3-pin outlets for 240 volt. Oh, some overload switches here, breaker there, AC reset, eco on and off, so we've got an economic button there. We've got USB outlets, USB, who'd have thought that on a petrol generator? Yeah, parallel connectors, there you go, I was right with those funky looking connectors. It's so you can connect two generators together to give you more power. And of course our 12 volt outlet socket there. So there you are, but the main function of this is for 240 volts. It is a beast. Petrol goes in the top. Now I really like this petrol cap. It's actually got an on-off switch on it. Look at that. So you can shut the vent, therefore stopping fumes of petrol coming into your vehicle if it's in your vehicle. Look at that. That's a really clever idea, because that's the one thing I was worried about, is whether or not it'd fill my van up with the smell of petrol. I'm not going to do a full video review of this. I will do that review later on. I'll try and think of something I can run off it. Maybe I'll pop to the shops and buy myself a little compressor as well to see if it can run a compressor, because that'll be the real test. I'll get onto that as soon as I finish making this video to see if I can find a little compressor that this will run, and then we'll put it to the test. After all, that's why I wanted it. Right, so with that out of the way, that last question, by the way, came from Simon Jones. Thank you, Simon, for the great question. Nice waffle, Mel. Quick question. We love a quick question. Do you see Mary as your forever van, or would you sell her on while she still has some value and start again? Cheers, Graham. And that comes from Graham Bailey. Well, Graham, when I first brought Mary, yes, I did see her as my forever van. My intention was to live in this van for at least 10 years and allow myself enough time to save up enough money to maybe try and get back on the property market. But like I say, now that I've actually experienced what it's like to live in a van full time, I would really like a bigger van, a much bigger van, to allow me to have things like this generator on board permanently, or my kayak on the roof, or my diving gear, rather than renting a lockup to store my stuff. I'd rather have a vehicle that's big enough for everything. Yeah, something really big. So to answer your question, yes, Mary will sadly one day probably be up for sale. And yet another quick question, and from another Graham, and spookily enough it pretty much touches on the same kind of subject but in a different kind of way. And this is from Graham Moore this time. Quick question, Mel. We love a quick question. Thank you, Graham. Do you worry about depreciation? If you have a house and a mortgage, you end up owning a house after 20 years. But living in a van, you will only end up with a 20-year-old van. What won't be worth much? Well, Graham, you'll be surprised to know Mary is already 15 years old, so in 20 years' time she will be 35 years old. If she manages to survive that long, and if she does, she will actually be worth more money in 20 years than I actually paid for it. And I'll probably hazard to guess substantially more money than when I paid for it. After all, she will become a classic. So no, that's not something I worry about. And also in my previous life, I actually owned 2 houses and I've lost them both. Thanks for the great question. Keep them coming. Hi Mel, just a quick question for next week's Waffle on a Wednesday. Do you have a freezer in your van? And if so, how easy is it to store food, meals to be defrosted and cooked? Thanks for all your hard work and great content. Well, thank you, and that comes from Michael Payne. I much prefer to eat fresh food, fresh produce. And I pretty much live on fish and salad. And fish doesn't really defrost that well. I much prefer to buy it fresh. And for that reason, I don't really have a big fridge in my van. Although I've got to say, I wish I did have a bigger fridge. I've got a... what is it? It's a Dometic C something or other 50. And for someone living full time in their van, it really isn't quite big enough, I'll be honest. I would like a bigger fridge, but as far as the freezer's concerned, and all my long-term viewers will know, is ice cream. One ice cream in particular, and that is rum and raisin. I even make my own rum and raisin ice cream. And if you haven't seen that video, I urge you to check it out. I'll put a link to that up here, where I show you how to make rum and raisin ice cream in your van, and you don't even need a freezer to make it. And if you find that unbelievable, then do check out this video where I make rum and raisin ice cream in my van, no freezer required. Thanks for the great question. This is a question that's never been asked before, and this comes from Wendy Taylor. Hello Mel, another quick question for you. Which is your favourite flavour fray bentos pie? Love the channel, regards Mike and Wendy. Well, Mike and Wendy, that's a good one. You'll be surprised to know that my favourite flavour, as you say, fray bentos pie, is actually the vegetable balti one. I know it sounds gross, but it is really nice. But unfortunately, they're really hard to find. It's very rare that I see them stocked in a supermarket. But when I do see them, I do tend to buy a few. So yeah, fray bentos, vegetable balti pie, absolutely pucker. Thanks for the great question. So here's a question for you guys, and this comes from Lorna Panchester. Hi Mel, love your videos. Can you recommend some books and sites for a newbie van enthusiast, telling us where it is legal to stop and what is allowed to do, etc. Thanks for the great waffle. So there you go, there's a question from Lorna Panchester for everybody else out there, because I honestly don't know if there are any books concerning van life. If there is anything that you would like to recommend to Lorna, then please do leave them in the comments section of this video, and I will go through them as well. And if I find anything good, I will let everybody know on next week's Waffle on a Wednesday. And also, if you've got any questions for me on next week, then please do leave them again in the comments section of this video, and I will do my best to answer those questions next week. Thanks for watching. Ta-ra for now.